Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Tuesday. Brian Kamenetzky and Andy Kamenetzky. Andy, the Lakers have fallen 10 games under 500. Is LeBron James just stat padding now? Fans seem to think so. We'll talk about it next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. We get this thing out bright and early for you. So no matter how you get your podcasts, where you get your podcasts, you can get your podcast about the Lakers anytime you need it. And we certainly appreciate all the support. The Lakers not making things easy for anyone right now. They fall, Andy, to 10 games under 500. 114 to 103, the final score Monday night against Toronto. We'll get to some interesting fan comments about LeBron James and what exactly he's doing out on the floor as the show goes along. But first, Andy, I was just kind of amazed. I noted on Monday's show that I was a little late checking into the Phoenix game. Like I got there, I was helping put dinner on the table also, and I turned to the TV and I'm Donald Glover in Community and the room is on fire and I've just got a stack of pizzas. They managed on Monday, the Lakers, to kind of hold my beer the first quarter of the Phoenix game.
Woo, Brian,
I didn't think they could get off to a worse start, but yet here we are.
They were outscored 33-12 in that first quarter, which 12. Couple points about that 12. They shot 12%.
Andy, you probably have more points to make than they scored points in that quarter.
12% from the field. 0 for 13.
Symmetry.
Oh, yeah. Well, remember, 7 was the unlucky number against Phoenix.
Right.
A bunch of 7s were stats in that first quarter that were really lousy and were part of their undoing. In this particular game, the first quarter, 12. It was the dirty dozen. 12% from the field overall. Missed all 13 of their threes. So in other words, Brian, they had more missed threes than points in that first quarter.
It's like what? It's like when you go watch like 8-year-olds play the Y.
I mean,
you know,
this was an absolute effing train wreck. And it's like it started out, the Raptors began the thing on a really quick 9-0 run. They had 3 baskets like right at the rim or like putbacks for Scotty Barnes, who somehow manages to be on both sides of the court, both ends at all times, and on all places of the court, like on each possession. Like it's amazing how much ground that guy covers.
He's like Dr. Strange. He can move from one place to another.
He's like Michael Keaton in multiplicity. There's like 4 of them out there. 3 minutes in, the Lakers had already given up 7 transition points, 10 points in the paint. Again, 3 minutes in with 11 minutes. Just under 11 minutes expired. Gary Trent Jr. missed a 3, and the tap back happened to go to Wayne Gabriel, who sprinted down the court for a dunk. That's when they hit double digits.
Yeah.
11 minutes basically.
I will say Wenyon got up for that shot. I mean, you got to give him credit.
Okay, here's what's really scary, Brian.
Oh, God, you're not done yet?
No, I'm not done with this first quarter.
Jesus.
My final point. The Lakers, with those 12 points in that quarter, tied the lowest output for any quarter this season, meaning they've done this more than once.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
No, 12 should be your worst quarter of the year.
12 should be like a franchise-defining outlier, not something where you go, well, you know, I mean, it happened earlier. We know what we're capable of. Was it eye-opening?
If we really put our minds to it, we just stuck to 11 and done something new. And it's funny, like, you know, I think, God, the Lakers can't play defense. Like, it's like, yes, and the defense to open the game was not good. But like they scored 12 points in the first quarter. Like you should be able to give up 33, which happens twice tonight for the Monday night for the Lakers. But like that is not a crazy number in the modern NBA to give up in a quarter and not, and not be down 21. Like after a 33-point quarter, you shouldn't be down 21. And as much attention as we give the defense, and understandably, this is a Lakers team whose identity was built on that side of the ball for the last couple seasons. They won a title on it. They had a remarkably good defense last year, despite some really crippling injuries. They're catastrophically bad on offense. They're 17th right now in defense, Andy. In terms of defensive efficiency, they're 25th in offense. Like that when you think about what this team was designed to do, say whatever you want about the offense. The defense, the offense is the unmitigated disastrous failure of this season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the absences of Anthony Davis, where we are right now, Kendrick Nunn all season, and dudes in and out of the lineup. Like when you revamp your team to be more offensively driven, and key guys miss a lot of time who are supposed to be elevating that offense, obviously that's going to be a mitigating factor. But
sure,
their offense has been bad all season, and other teams go through stretches where they don't have their guys and somehow manage to run semi-competent offenses. Like the Lakers have not been good offensively in any scenario, including really when the big three have been there, acknowledging that it is a small sample size and it was a complicated thing they were supposed
4
to be doing.
hours.
Honestly, it's about that
like
much
that. It feels
in
like
terms of game time.
No, it feels like it.
It's really, it's been problematic. And this is where also Frank Vogel ends up fairly or not, and I would say a little bit of both, under the microscope, because that is not his calling card anyway. So it really becomes apparent that as much as he is playing a bad hand, he's not somebody in this context who can at least play the best imaginable version of that bad hand. Like he doesn't inspire confidence in terms of just, okay, you know what? He's making the most of what this is.
Yeah,
like
I think that's fair.
Like in the way like Mike D'Antoni, you would have hope for. D'Antoni has shown that you give him these guys, he will somehow make it work.
Yeah, I mean they'll give up 160 points instead of 140, but sure.
Right.
It is, one of these deals where you see people so often, they don't care, they're this, they're that, whatever. And I don't disagree that they don't play as hard as the Clippers. They're also not as capable as looking like they're playing as hard as the Clippers, for example. I use them as an example both because they're a team that LA fans pay some attention to, and also a team that has lost their stars. The Clippers are significantly more athletic than the Lakers. Even the Clippers' young players they're more athletic than the Lakers' young players. There's just more dynamism going on in that team. But Ty Lue's also a better coach. Let's do this next though, because fundamentally we have kind of a talent problem here on the Lakers, and it relates to another topic which is starting to pop up a lot. You see it on Lakers Twitter, certainly on the Locked On Lakers YouTube page, which we encourage everybody to subscribe to. You get the podcast a little early when you do it that way, about LeBron James and what the heck he's doing out on the floor right now. So talk about all of this stuff coming up.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by BetOnline. It's that time of year again. College basketball's tournament is finally upon us. So for all the latest odds, contests, player props, betonline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to the website today, use your mobile device, learn more about the trends in action. Bet online where the games start.
I was looking, Andy, at the box score from Monday's game, and
whatever, sicko.
I know. And so thank you, sir. May I have another? It's one of these things, like I'm just kind of looking at this thing, and I'm, okay, LeBron James played pretty well, I thought, on Monday, 11-19 from the floor. He did have 5 turnovers against only 3 assists, 9 rebounds. I thought he played pretty well.
Not easy to come by in this.
Assists were not easy to come by in this game. That is absolutely true. But I mean, importantly too, I thought his body language and his engagement, even when they were behind, was pretty good.
Well, I mean, it's interesting when you talk about his level of engagement. It was high.
Anger, right?
I was going to say it's only because LeBron was so damn mad. There was a there was a moment where he got called for a foul under the basket. I don't remember who was driving on him,
Oh, it
but
doesn't matter.
he grabbed the ball and slammed it down 3 times with ferocity. I made a clip. You can find it at Cam Brothers. I tweeted it out. I mean, he was mad. He also, there were a lot of, as Kobe, we used to see with Kobe, the death stare. There were some death stares going on, and LeBron did not speak to the media after the game, which is very rare for LeBron. LeBron is, again, a lot like Kobe, somebody that pretty much always gets in front of the media after games, wins or losses. But the unifying factor with LeBron, when he doesn't get in front of the media, it's because he's mad as hell.
He's really angry. You could all, I mean, it could be a treatment question, for his knee. He was questionable sort of coming into the game and ended up playing 40 minutes, which this is another problem with this team right now. It's like,
I don't know for a fact, Brian, that it wasn't treatment
related.
No,
I think it was.
I'm very confident with my confidence that it was not treatment related.
Gloria taught him that if you don't have nice things to say about people, don't say anything at all, or just tweet it passive aggressively. And so, outside of LeBron though, who played pretty well, like you look at the rest of this roster, Westbrook was fine. I mean, again, assists were hard to come by in this one. But he certainly wasn't transformative. He didn't, do anything spectacular. 14 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 of 10 from the floor. Didn't hurt anything, but, obviously didn't elevate the Lakers. Malik Monk was 3 of 8 from the floor. Austin Reeves was 1 of 7 from the floor. Wenyen Gabriel, 1 of 8. Other than THT, who was 8 of 13, had 20 points.
He had a nice game.
Yeah, and I'd love to. If we don't do it today, we'll do it tomorrow. But we'll talk a little bit about him. He's sort of quietly, I think, restoring some of the value that we were worried he lost. But go through the who Toronto played: Siakam, Barnes, Van Vliet, Trent. 4 guys that after LeBron, I would take over pretty much anybody the Lakers put on the floor right now. Possible exception of Westbrook, but Achua has played really well for them since the All-Star break. Thad Young, who only plays like 15 minutes a night, would probably be one of the better players on the Lakers right now.
On their bench.
Yeah. I mean, certainly on the bench, like possibly in the starting lineup too. People are kind of mixed on Boucher. Kem Birch is, would be useful for the Lakers, but, is fine.
And OG Anunoby didn't even play in this game.
Correct. And so, we could sit here and debate the relative value of some of those guys against the Lakers, but that's like 7 dudes that, you could argue are better than 4 or 5 at least of the players the Lakers put on the floor after LeBron. Like, that's just not going to win you games. Yeah. It's not like Toronto's a good team, but they're not like a title contender right now. I mean, they're not that good.
I mean, it was interesting. THT was asked after the game about, the Lakers' tendency of late to fall into these deep holes and then have to attempt to get out of it. They had a bit of a fake fourth quarter comeback that we've seen a bunch of these over the course of the year.
Where you're down by 9 with like a minute 20 left, and you're like, well, and you're like, no.
And he was asked why this has happened, and he said, no. I would have really loved if he said, the F you asking me for? I don't start. That would have been a fantastic response. But, he did note, though, that they become very aware of these holes that they dig themselves in. And when they start getting behind in games, I think mentally, and this is something that's come up from a lot of guys recently, but over the course of the season, when they get into these holes, I think they become hyper aware of the talent discrepancy and how hard it's going to be to get out of it. Sometimes they fight harder than other times, but either way, they know it. And Frank Vogel was pretty complimentary of the team after this game in terms of just their overall effort and their desire to try to get back in. And, he said that they didn't let go of the rope, which I guess was fine. But my thought was, do they even know where the rope is?
I disagree with your evaluation there, Andy. I think they know where the rope is, and I agree that they haven't let go of it. I just don't think the rope is connected to anything. It's just a rope. It's not. There's not attached to anything.
This is them after hanging onto the rope. It's just like the end of the tug of war in Squid Game. Even if you win, you know that eventually death is coming. You're basically just staving off the inevitable death. That's what it feels like right now for these guys.
Wow, we've reached the Squid Game portion of the season. Look, Andy, it's Andy before Athletic Greens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're an old team, man.
But even the young. I mean, I'm not saying THT is. Moves well, and he's a decent, good. He's a good NBA athlete or whatever. But he doesn't. That's not like the core of his game. Malik Monk is has got some.
Toronto's Toronto's a bad matchup for them if the Lakers are at full strength.
Right. Just the
young, athletic, long team. Like, that's bad for them in any scenario.
Oh, completely. But the point I'm sort of making here is this is not it's the old guys versus the young guys. Like, the Lakers' young guys aren't hyper athletic. And the ones that are, Wenyen Gabriel, seems like a really good athlete, but he's kind of not good at other things. I hope he sticks in the league. Seems like a nice kid, but you're not going to, they started the second half with Wenyen Gabriel to try to add a little size. I mean, but if you think Stanley Johnson is kind of a negative offensively, Wenyen Gabriel makes Stanley Johnson look like a juggernaut offensively.
Yeah.
He's much better, but because Stanley can handle the ball a little bit. He's a pretty good passer. And I don't mean this to be let's bag on Wenyen Gabriel, because it's not his fault, but that is it. You can't, when you put, of course he is. I mean, he's trying to stay in the league, but you put Wenyen Gabriel on the floor with Austin Reeves and sort of a diminished Westbrook, and who's the other guy who isn't LeBron in that starting lineup, Monk. It's like you're putting an enormous amount of pressure on Malik Monk to do stuff. It's just they don't have the athletic length on Toronto. Makes even the athletes on the Lakers, the guys you would consider athletic, look very unathletic. Let's get to this LeBron question, though, because this talent disparity is, I think, at the core of why they are losing. I think it is ultimately at the core of why LeBron is so frustrated. Is he is on a team that is bad, that he knows is bad, and I think he is starting to understand he cannot carry it, but it's too bad for him to carry, no matter how well he plays. It's led both to some interesting commentary from some fans, and, as you put to me when we were trying to figure out some topics for tonight, an interesting question about next season and some of the things we'll be looking forward to. So we'll talk about all those things next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by rockauto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models out there, it is impossible to stock all the parts you would need in a traditional chain storefront. And look, why would you even spend 30%, 50%, 100% more for the exact same auto parts at a chain store or new car dealership anyway, dummy? You can get it for far less. Yeah, you mark. You can get it for far less at rockauto.com. For example, Honda Odyssey fuel pump, $353 from a chain store. It's only $216 from Rock Auto. They are a family business. They have been serving auto part customers online for 20 years. So whether it's a classic or a daily driver, you can get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. So go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
So if you scroll around Lakers Twitter, you look around our show page, the Locked On Lakers show page, you start to see an interesting sentiment from fans about LeBron and the numbers that he's putting up, and essentially, Andy, accusing him of stat padding. And I'm not saying that this is the common belief among Lakers fans, but I've started to notice it significantly more, certainly over the course of the last week or so, 2 weeks. What do you what do you think they're getting at here? Because I chalk a lot of it up to obviously huge frustration with how this season is going. But accusing a guy like LeBron of just stat padding is a very interesting spot to be in, I think.
Well, I think in some respects, there are people getting at the idea that when LeBron is out there, we've talked about this, the defensive intensity can come and go for reasons that I think reflect back to the bad knee that he has been playing on. It can also reflect back to the mileage that he's accumulated and, only having
the offensive responsibility
right,
and
all that, and
relative disengagement. Yes.
Right. And all of these things. But then people start wondering, okay, when he is on the court, when he has decided to utilize these minutes for something, is he putting the numbers that he will accumulate? And we've talked about this on a few shows recently. Like, it feels like LeBron is setting some type of new record or hitting some type of new milestone with every game, which is very similar to what we saw when we covered Kobe's last couple seasons. When you reach this rarefied air that guys like Kobe and LeBron are in, by definition, every time you play, you're passing somebody else.
And the supercomputers now are so good at figuring out, like, oh, there's a new record. Oh, the first guy to ever do this. Like, yeah.
But Brian, you know what we don't really pay much attention to or sort of quantify when it comes to records and the NBA and the GOATs and all that stuff? Defense. Defense is not something that people. I challenge you, Brian. You and I have been around the league a long time. Name a single defensive record of any kind.
Like steals or blocks or something?
Who holds whatever type of record for anything linked to defense? Now stop, because you have no idea. You have no clue. So you know what I mean? Like, other than you've won Defensive Player of the Year.
Right. I mean, like, there's blocks. They wouldn't even have a lot of defensive counting stats. There's blocks and steals,
exactly.
and people have talked about both of those things as potentially overrated, especially steals.
So I think there are people that question what LeBron is prioritizing when he's on the court. Is he prioritizing the numbers that are more quantifiable in a way that, might mean sacrificing some defense? How much, if at all, does it affect the Lakers? And how empty is it, period?
Right. And look, the same fans, if LeBron is going to play, he's going to do. I mean, his numbers are what his numbers always are. And if he doesn't score 50, we've discovered the Lakers can't win. But like, I do feel like a lot of these same people, were he to not be scoring, I don't know, would either be saying that that he's completely checked out, or if he just didn't play, which is sort of the alternative to quote unquote stat padding, that he'd given up on the Lakers and had quit. What it says to me,
well, for example, one more thing, because I think this is really important. He's put himself in position where he could win the scoring title this year, and doing that at this stage of his career would be pretty unprecedented. And I think in the eyes of some skeptics, a goal that kind of, polishes the proverbial turd.
Right. But I don't.
I'm not saying I agree. I'm just saying that's.
I think what it is, because all of these arguments to me are stupid, because clearly nobody else on this team can score. It's like, if they want somebody to put the ball in the basket, it's going to be him first and foremost, while AD is out, especially. But what I just think it is there is still a kind of a tenuous relationship between LeBron and a certain section of the fan base. I think most fans are fine with LeBron, and he got him a title. He's still incredibly good. He could win a scoring title at age 37. He puts up big numbers. He is this season has been imperfect, but he's still been pretty damn good. But there is a section of the fan base that was never really that high on him even before, when he got here. And now that it's gotten bad, I just, this to me is a reflection of sort of that lack of institutional, what's the right word I'm trying to think of? Like, when you have like goodwill built up or whatever, right? I can't think of the right word, but like he doesn't have that in a section of it. And so people are just mad, and he doesn't get kind of the free pass that some stars on other teams will get from their fan base.
Well, I think also too with LeBron, because it's so well known that he played a role in creating this team that has gone so sideways. And to be honest, LeBron's behavior around the trade deadline was not his finest moment in terms of leadership or accountability. So I think, the way he was very clearly he was very clearly around the deadline, and at times beyond that seemed to try to, unbloody his hands from what's gone on this year. And I would agree. In some respects, that is what is driving that fan reaction. But what was also interesting too, and look, you and I have talked about this before, Brian. I had wondered about the idea of, is it worth it for LeBron to actually be playing right now in terms of just however long he's going to be with the Lakers? It's on a clock. So are you getting the most out of him? Is this the wisest use of LeBron, just practically speaking, with where he is in his career? Is it worth it for him, as amazing as it is for him to be putting up 50 at this age? Is it actually worth it for the Lakers as, an investment in trying to keep that window pried open as long as they can? But the other thing, though, that I was thinking about that was interesting is, we've talked about this, Brian. This offseason is going to be difficult for Rob Pelinka. And the
making
Rambi
this team good again is going to be a challenge.
Right. And maybe they can get creative about this. I do think that Russ's contract will be easier to move this offseason. Not easy, but easier. And I think their options could increase. But either way, they're going to be limited. They don't have a lot of assets. And there is at least decent chance that next season, maybe not as catastrophic as this one, but there could be some struggles, and it could be relatively underwhelming compared to what people thought the entirety of the LeBron AD run could be. And if it's like that, that means next season will be another year where the Lakers aren't particularly impressive. And it will mean that in the 5 years LeBron's been with the Lakers, he's either won a title or the team has not been particularly good. And I wonder if the stat accumulation in that context will strike a lot of people as hollow, empty calories. And if it'll change the way people perceive him, passing Karl Malone, eventually passing Kareem, whatever other milestone that otherwise they would be exceptionally impressed by, if it'll make people find it a little less, engaging, a little less.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're following a player and not following a team. I think there's that's sort of just going to be
combined with the idea that LeBron is seen as a mercenary.
Right. That sort of I think he'll have more. It'll almost interestingly become like a bigger national story. LeBron is getting close to Kareem. LeBron is doing, and look, Laker fans are going to cheer for him and all that because it's a cool thing to have happen in when he's wearing a Lakers jersey, and all that. But yeah, I mean, if the Lakers aren't good or competitive next year, if they're this again. Yeah, no question. It sort of hollows out some of the fun that goes on around these things, just by definition. It'll hollow it out for LeBron. Because I mean, like, look, the guy can score what he needs to do to pass Kareem on a bad team or a good team. He doesn't he doesn't need the team to be bad for him to have like the freedom to go out and score a bunch of points. He can do that either way. Think about Albert Pujols, and the home runs and 500 home runs or whatever it was when he was doing with the Angels after he had. But that was after Pujols had become severely diminished. The team wasn't very. At least LeBron is still playing at a really high level. But it will be interesting to see what impact that has on people's interest and how it's perceived, how fans perceive it. Because, yeah, it's going to be the better solution would be have LeBron score 26, 27 points a game next year on a decent team.
Yeah. And look, I that's what I hope will be the case. I mean, everybody knows I'm a big Laker fan. I want this to work out. And I'm not even saying that if the team is mediocre or even worse next season, that people should look at LeBron hitting those milestones any worse. I think it could happen. And
it's an interesting question. It is. All right. So when the Lakers now go out on the road, where they've been particularly terrible,
lost 10 straight on the road.
Yes, and they're now 10 games under 500. But Portland did lose on Monday, and then that leaves the Lakers still 2.5 games up on that 11 spot. They are now only 1 game, I believe, ahead of the Pellies. Yep, 1 game ahead of the Pellies, but still 2.5 over Portland. The Blazers are going to do their part. They're going to do whatever they can to avoid that playoff spot. But the Lakers might make it hard for them.
Timberwolves. Cat just put up 60.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah.
All right, Locked On Lakers.
Been playing well.
Locked On Lakers on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to that. Again, thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day. We'll see everybody on Wednesday.